Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The gameplay that you guys are watching in the background is from my stream that I did yesterday, and it is mostly going to consist of me doing side quests and activities in the open area around Calm. So there's not going to be any story spoilers or anything like that if that is something that you are concerned with, but holy crap, I have so much to say about what I've experienced of the game so far. Now, my copy of the game was provided to me by Square Enix so that I could give it a look, tell you guys my opinions and all of that stuff, but I was only granted access to it yesterday. So I've only been able to put about 10 hours or so into the main game, and a lot of that was spent with me just exploring a lot of the side activities and getting familiar with what we can expect from the open world aspect of the game, because I feel that that is something that is going to be significantly important for those of you that really want to enjoy this particular Final Fantasy game. So I really wanted to, just hunker down and touch on that. Now, before we begin today's video, though, I feel that it is important for us to bring up the reviews from people that were given much earlier access, because that's always a good sign for a video game whenever the publisher is comfortable enough to allow people to publish reviews significantly ahead of release, which I believe was like a week ahead of release or something like that. Like, I remember doing the podcast with Cowboy, and it was a decent chunk of time ahead of the release of the game, and Cowboy was able to just talk to me about a large portion of the game, which, by the way, you guys should check out that podcast if you want an in-depth discussion with someone who's played through pretty much the whole game at this point. So just letting you guys know. But starting with the reviews, if we go over to Metacritic, we're looking at a 92 in score. If we go over to OpenCritic, we're looking at a 93 top critic average with a 100% critic recommendation. 100% recommendation! Holy crap. You look over here, Eurogamer giving it a 4 out of 5, IGN 9 out of 10, Games Radar 4.5 out of 5, Easy Allies 9.5 out of 10, Metro Games Central 9 out of 10, Game Informer 8.5 out of 10, GameSpot 8 out of 10, Destructoid 9.5 out of 10, and there's plenty more. I also went over to Reddit just to see the overall sentiment. We have the same, some of the same scores that we already saw, and it is pretty friggin' wild. There's just like universal acclaim from most of the outlets that we're able to review. Like Washington Post here, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is so good it nearly wrecked my life. So suffice it to say, like, all of the reviews are overwhelmingly positive. So now let's talk about my own experience with it, which basically, if you're looking at it in terms of visuals, I think the game visually looks really good. Particularly if you go into graphics mode, this is a very interesting thing, because if you guys know me, you know that I'm all about, frames. Give me 60 FPS, that's what I want, and the gameplay that you're watching right now is actually in 60 FPS. But a little bit later in the live stream, I actually swapped to quality mode, or graphics mode, whatever they call it in this game, which is something that I usually don't do because I just like faster frame rates. And holy crap, the game looks absolutely phenomenal. The game looks really, really good in graphics mode. This might end up being one of the few games that I end up playing in graphics mode as opposed to performance, because there is just such a massive difference. It's also still nice to, to have the option. I would still prefer, like, focus everything on 60 FPS, but god damn, dude. And not to mention that from what I've experienced so far, the 30 FPS that is there is solid 30. It's not like it's drifting up and down 15, 20. It was just like solid 30. Good frame pacing. Again, I've only experienced like the first 10 hours or so, but it is a pretty big, wide open area, as you guys can see here. And in that area, I had solid performance, whether that is on 60 FPS or 30 FPS. It was pretty friggin' good. And I enjoyed playing both in both modes. Like, I think that potentially if I'm doing a fight that is a little bit more challenging, I might swap over to 60 FPS because the additional responsiveness just feels that much better. But I think that for the most part, due to the way how the combat works and you have those pause moments and whatnot, I think that 30 FPS is very much playable, which is a good thing. So from the perspective of visuals, fantastic. From the perspective of sound, oh my god. if this game does not win sound, and here's the thing, I've only listened to a little bit of the soundtrack, keep that in mind, but I will be shocked if this game does not sweep soundtrack of the year, because it is just that good. And I understand that a lot of those tracks are like remix tracks from Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy VII and whatnot, and I don't know how a lot of people feel about that, because at the end of the day, one of the things about me is that I'm kind of a newcomer to the Final Fantasy VII universe, so to speak. I started with Final Fantasy VII Remake, then I played a bit of the original Final Fantasy. I didn't play through it all the way, but I did play a decent chunk. And then I played Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion, which I loved. I thought that one was amazing. I've recently even went ahead and I watched Advent Children in preparation for this game. I've been doing a lot of prep work, all right? I've been excited for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and so far, this has delivered on all fronts, and the soundtrack is one of those things that is just like so front and center that I absolutely adore. Now, the music that I have playing in the background, this is actually from the remake, from Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Mako Reactor battle music. I just have that playing on loop for the video. But like, trust me, the soundtrack on this is so brutally solid. However, I do have a bit of a criticism, and that is to say that the sound mixing could have done better, because I think that the team understood, dude, the soundtrack is so good, we just got to have it front and center the whole time. To the point where sometimes I can barely hear the conversations that some of the characters are doing, which is a little bit much. Like, you guys need to balance that stuff out, figure it out. I don't know. I understand you're excited about the soundtrack, but sometimes it can be a little bit overbearing and just takes over everything else. In terms of sound effects, I also thought that those were good. All of that stuff is looking fantastic. So visuals, sound, no real problems other than, maybe go into the settings, lower the music volume a little bit, maybe also lower the effects a little bit so that you can hear the dialogue a little bit better. But other than that, nothing really to point out other than to say that it is absolutely excellent from what I've experienced so far. Now, in terms of the story, oh my God. The opening of the game, I feel like, was really strong and spoke to me a lot. I don't really want to talk about it because it is not the opening of the demo. Like, I don't know if everybody is aware of what happens and all of that stuff. And I know that for a lot of people, you're going to experience that beginning portion of the game and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But for me, it was. And if you know me and my opinions on a lot of the stuff surrounding what I've experienced so far of the Final Fantasy VII universe, you'll probably understand why. But I thought that the opening was really strong. But anyway, so I went through that. That thing was cool. The story that you experience afterwards, that's also looking pretty solid so far. Again, I'm just still in the calm region, very, very beginnings of beginnings. So I think then we go into the combat. I think that the combat is really good. There's some really big improvements from the original. When I say the original, I'm talking about Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's a lot of improvements in terms of like what Cloud can do, what Tifa can do, and giving them aerial capabilities and all of that stuff. They're much stronger in the air now, and the overall quality of life that you now have in the combat is much better, and it feels absolutely phenomenal to play. Now, I still struggle with some things, like I'm not too used to swapping characters on the fly. I did it in Remake, but in this one, you actually want to do it in order to build up the synergy points and all of that stuff. And there's also synergy skills, and I haven't unlocked all of those, but I like the overall flow, which is all about you building your team. And at the beginning, you have access to Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, and Barrett, and Red 13, and it's all about picking like 3 of those and figuring out how you're going to be leveling up your skills, which is done through a thing called folios, which kind of like unlocks different abilities and team-based attacks that you can do, synergy skills and synergy actions and all of that stuff. But fundamentally, there's a lot of depth to the combat itself, and it feels real good. I've been playing in dynamic difficulty so that things don't just get killed in seconds, so that I'm actually forced to engage with the combat a little bit better, and I think that feels good so far. So it'll be interesting to see when I actually start fighting harder things. I already fought one mob that was a little bit harder than what I expected. He's like a side quest, this white wolf, and that one was cool because I actually had to think about how I was going to tackle that fight because I feel like I was a little bit under leveled for it, but it was good because I was still able to finagle around with the combat and figure it out. Right now, my team is Barret and Tifa. As you can see, I really like that combo, even though at the beginning you don't really get good synergy skills for this. It's more like, hey, you want Barret, you should play Barret in Red 13. Like, those synergize a little bit better. You want Tifa, I think it's Tifa and Barret at the beginning. Those synergize kind of all right. But Barret and Aerith, the synergies at the beginning aren't all there. But it's one of those things where it takes you a while to go up through the tree and figure that stuff out and whatnot. Let me move ahead a little bit here because we are doing just a little bit of story, and I don't want to like bore you guys too not bore you, but I don't want to reveal too much of the story there. So we'll just skip through these. And this is like the Chadley part with the training and all of that stuff. But yeah, gameplay so far has been rock solid. I like the open world that they got going because it doesn't feel too overwhelming. Like, they let you explore the open world at your leisure, and it's not like, here's 50 different things. Like, they do have the Ubisoft tower system, but it reveals like 2 or 3 activities whenever you go up to a tower and you do the thing. It's like, hey, you get the tower, and like, here's a couple of activities. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they decided to go with that, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's whatever. And I guess that's what a lot of people enjoy, so whatever, right? But I like just roaming the world. A lot of the time that I've been in the game has actually been spent just roaming the world and encountering things organically. Just like running around, not really like following specific objectives, but just like roaming around. It's like, oh, there's a thing here. Oh, there's a thing there. And there are little bits of breadcrumbs, so to speak, that they leave for you out in the world. So for instance, there's this thing that you find which are live streams. And as you are going through the world, whenever you are close to a live stream, a little red bird shows up and it kind of like guides you to the live stream. So even if you haven't marked it as an objective in your map, you know, the little bird shows up and you're like, oh, I guess I can follow this one to go here. Or there's a little chocobo chick that shows up whenever there's a chocobo stop nearby, and he guides you to that. There's usually stuff in the environment that you don't need to just metagame your way through the map and figuring that stuff out that way, right? You can actually just engage with the map organically, or go ahead and beeline to the next story beat if that is something that you want to do. But me, I like doing the whole Roomba thing, right? That's usually my jam. But anyway, you know, at the end of the day, I'm enjoying the experience quite a bit. I think that the game is a ton of fun. I'm going to be playing it a crap load. I am not going to be streaming the whole thing. I want to, but the thing is, because I'm going to be away and I'm going to be very busy in the upcoming months, I just don't have enough time to put into streaming the game. So I will be making content on it, but streams are going to be weird. The streaming situation for this is going to be weird for me because it's also a huge game, right? And I want to play it and be ready for Dragon's Dogma 2 when that comes out. But one of the things that I wanted to bring out, kind of like as my closing statement when it comes to this, the vibe that I get from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is essentially that with the remake, right? What the team was doing when they created Final Fantasy VII Remake was they were figuring out how to do the combat system properly. They were heavily focusing on, you know, establishing that combat system as a solid experience for users. And they were trying to see what they could do with whatever engine they are doing with this. And again, this is not me saying that this is a fact. This is my interpretation, because I understand that a lot of people were not huge fans of Final Fantasy VII Remake because of the padding. And I agree, there's a lot of padding in the game. I still greatly enjoyed it, but there is a lot of padding in that game. And I understand why now, because they were trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. In a lot of ways, I feel like Final Fantasy VII Remake was an experimental title for the team. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the result of that experimentation, which is basically everything is better. You have better combat, better quality of life, a better open world experience, which fundamentally Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was not open world at all. Remake was not open world at all. But you have that better open world experience. You have better combat. You have for all intents and purposes, I really like the story. I understand that there's going to be people that are not going to like it because they're fans of the original. And like, look, I'm not against you. You like the original, that's your prerogative. That's cool. But Remake and Rebirth is how I'm experiencing Final Fantasy VII. Remake, Rebirth, and Reunion. That's how I've been experiencing the universe of Final Fantasy VII. And I've been absolutely loving it. But again, Rebirth feels like this was the game that they wanted to do all along. But in order to get here, they had to go through the learning experience that was Final Fantasy VII Remake. And that is the reason why there are some aspects of Remake that seem less polished, a little bit more padding, all of that stuff. And from what I can tell, it doesn't feel like that is going to be the case with Rebirth. Now, this was one of the things that I specifically asked Cowboy, who's played, at the time, had played over 80 hours of the game or so, about the padding things. And he said that there were like 3 sections in the whole 80 hours that he had played of the game. There were 3 sections where he felt that the padding was annoying, and these were like 15-minute segments. So if you get like 1 hour of annoying padding and what appears to be an over 100-hour gameplay experience, I don't think that's a big deal, personally. But again, I'm speaking from secondhand experience and all of that. But like, if you're asking me if I think it's worth it, naturally, it's going to be hard to give an opinion based only on 10 hours. What I can tell you is I'm having an absolute blast with it, and it sucks that I have to go on a trip right now because I really just want to sink my teeth into it and not let go, which is what's going to happen the moment I'm back home, I assure you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth so far. Let me know what you guys think about it. Are you playing it? Did you enjoy the stream that I did? There's also the stream, naturally, if you want to see more gameplay for the game, you can check out the stream. I'll put a link probably on the top right-hand side of the video here somewhere or something. But yeah, for now, that's going to be it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.